So it was kind of disappointing when I found out that Vitalik couldn't be here in person. You know, we love him. He's been here almost every year. He is obviously the spirit animal that inspired the spirit animal of the buffacorn in some ways. And it was really kind of a sad thing. I mean, he's got a lot to say, it seems like, on things like payments and the things we're talking about.
UX, user experience.
Yeah. So, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if maybe we could have a chat with him right now?
Yeah, but how?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we just think it. Wouldn't it be cool? You guys want to talk to Vitalik?
Should we get him here?
What do you think? Oh my God, look at
Hello.
that. You ask and you shall receive. Vitalik?
Yeah, I get to talk to people through the cyber. Amazing.
Can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Give it up for the AV guys. This was not exactly the easiest thing to do. Woo. So Vitalik, you know, recently you've been talking a lot about things like payments and UX and, you know, adoption type of things. You know, Stani and I have been talking about building in a bear market, and, you know, we'd like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on, say, UX and like what are the next steps for this? Do you think you got it in you to give us a little bit there?
Yeah. So I think just to start off, kind of the general big framework that I have for what we need to be doing over the next 10 years, right, is basically that the 2010s were a decade of very early stage discovery, lots of theory, lots of very base level infrastructure, and applications, you know, largely focused on basically existing crypto geeks and people who really wants to early adopt stuff. And the next 10 years are going to have to be the decade of like actually getting to you know, real use cases that are actually directly you know, usable in very concrete ways by you know, millions of people, including people who have who would otherwise have nothing to do with crypto. And you know, people like this exist in all parts of the world, right? Like practical need for crypto is, in a lot of cases, stronger in places like, say, you know, Latin America and Africa and Southeast Asia than it is in places like the US, right? Because, you know, yes, you can get deplatformed and censored in those things, but at the same time, you know, the average case is that, you know, there are banking systems and they do kind of work. But in a lot of these other places, like even that is just totally not true, right? And a lot of those regions depend a lot more on international transactions, whether it's for business or remittances or other things. And you know, traditional ways of doing things across countries just don't even exist yet, right? So there's much more severe international problems, much more severe problems with local centralized infrastructure and just all of these things, right? But at the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, crypto in its current form still has a lot of problems with regard to its ability to be used in these places, right? And then, like, later on, I'll talk in a bit more detail about this. But they basically, you know, lots of people in Latin America use you know, cryptocurrency, including Ethereum, and how do lots of them use it? Well, often the answer is Binance, right? And, you know, on the one hand, I think, you know, we have to be appreciative to Binance for just being there when, you know, none of the other big global providers are in many cases, and just providing them some way that people can go and actually use things. But at the same time, I think it's also important for the ecosystem to move toward more decentralization, and you know, we have to ask the question of like, how can we actually improve the decentralization, or how can we actually improve the user experience of the decentralized approaches, and like actually get the decentralized approaches to the point where people are willing to like really you know, use them and not get scared as soon as there's a the first time that they see a problem.
So, Vitalik, You got about 15 more minutes of stuff for us, right? So I think Stani and I are going to...
I do indeed, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to step off the stage, and I just wanted to say the Bufficorn misses you and demands a hug the next time you come, okay? I was instructed to tell you this, so I'm sorry.
I will. Next time I come, I am happy to hug the Bufficorn and even any friends that the Bufficorn ends up making by the time next one comes around. So.
We will hold you to that. So thank you so much for spending your really early morning with us, and we'll give the stage to you. And then after he's done, that's a wrap. So take it away, Vitalik.
Sounds good. Okay. Let's see what we can do there. Do you guys see the sharing? Testing 1, 2, 3. Just want to confirm that people are seeing the slides and hearing me. Seeing me would be nice, but a bit less important.
Yes, we are seeing this.
Amazing. Okay. So, concrete challenges in user experience, right? So I think, as I kind of said in my introduction, lots of people have a clear and deep need for Ethereum-based applications today. These tools that we're building are, tools that are not just providing an opportunity for people to, have fun and kind of express their love for freedom and decentralization as ideals, and make money and lose money and all of those things. These are things that lots of people, even people who have no attachments to these principles, actually just really need to use, and lots of people are using them. Sometimes these applications are currency, but other times it's also more complicated things that people get interested in. I was recently on a trip to Africa, and I was actually surprised by just how much interest there was in the concept of DAOs. The concept of local groups coming together and creating some kind of circle of trust is something that is already native to a lot of cultures there, which is I thought was something fascinating, right? And today it's payments. I expect that ZK-based things are things that people are going to start having a need for in the future, even the whole Ethereum identity ecosystem at some point. But the problem today is that a lot of people are accessing these things using centralized services. And centralized services are convenient. They do the job. But ultimately, centralized services, in my view, especially centralized services in these really core positions of control, where they're not just on the side providing a useful tool like Etherscan, but they're really running the experience. They're ultimately not the end goal of crypto, right? And I think in general, we know what the problems with centralized services at their worst can be, right? So. I'm sure people have seen, this guy. I saw on the Twitter that there is apparently even some toilet paper of him. But people trusted the guy because the guy looks professional, and the guy said the right things. The guy virtue signaled his love of social impact. The guy even virtue signaled the version of the social impact meme that appeals to nerds. And he went on panels with lovely chaps like Bill Clinton. It turns out that he had double spending relations with people's assets. Now, this is, I think, was correctly identified by a lot of people as really showing the risk of just being okay with relying on centralized services at a large scale, right? But, the challenge is that if we want people to actually use decentralized services, we have to really address the challenges and understand why they are not winning right now. And the two big reasons are basically 1, fees, 2, user experience. Now, fees we're not going to talk about because fees are being solved by layer 2 scaling and rollups and Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, Scroll, Tycho, Starknet, ZK Sync, and that whole ecosystem, and EIP 4844 and dank sharding and proto dank sharding, and we've kind of heard that whole story. User experience is the other really big and important piece. So a bit of a personal story. So a year ago, I went to a coffee shop in Argentina, right? And the coffee shop accepted, had an owner who recognized me and, had a crypto wallet. And so we, asked if we could pay in ETH, and we did. And, it was a really lovely interaction, and, we all enjoyed it. But at the same time, some of the details of actually attempting to make the transaction from my side, showed what some of the issues are, right? So fees were high, right? So transaction fees just to send some ETH while I was on this visit in 2021 were somewhere between $1 and $5. In 2022, they dropped down to below $1. Now they're finally picking back up again. And, we're, I think, cheering that our ultrasound money is ultrasound again, but we also have to remember that the flip side of that is that it is, again, more expensive to send transactions. Transactions take a long time to get accepted on chain. Once you click send, you have to wait a long time for it to get accepted. And once a transaction is accepted, there's even problems on the merchant side or the application of the recipient. Services often don't see the transaction immediately. Even when they have a facility to show transactions that are unconfirmed, they often don't even show it unconfirmed for some amount of time. So some UX hurdles there. Now, EIP 1559, it is generally viewed as an efficiency improvements reform and as the thing that created the whole ultrasound money thing. But I think it's important to remember one of the ways in which the efficiency improving side of it manifests, which is that it massively reduces waiting times for people trying to send transactions, right? So blue here is before EIP 1559. This yellow orangey color is after EIP 1559. Average waiting times decreased by a lot. And both in theory and in my own personal observation, the merge actually decreased waiting times even more, right? By making block times more stable, it's reduced the average amount of time you have to wait until the next block from 13 seconds to 6 seconds. And rollups with pre-confirmations could potentially make some kind of initial confirmation of payments pretty close to instant. So lots of things actually happening on the transaction accepting front, right? But this is not the only problem. So back in 2013, when I was visiting San Francisco for the first time, and this was around the time when I was writing the Ethereum white paper. And so at the time, Ethereum did not exist yet. And so I was excited about Bitcoin. And I remember that I was told that there was this lovely sushi place beside the Internet Archive that accepted Bitcoin for payments. So I went there and I paid in Bitcoin. But the problem is that when I tried to make the payment, my internet did not work, right? And after my internet did not work, I basically kept trying. And eventually I had to basically walk over about 50 meters to get closer to the Internet Archive, hop onto the Internet Archive's Wi-Fi, and send the transaction. Consumer internet is not 100% reliable. My internet on literally my smartphone is not 100% reliable. There are just times when it stops working for some number of seconds, and this is just a thing that happens to people. So how do we solve this, right? What happens when a consumer tries to pay in person and the internet doesn't work? So option one is, merchants could just have Wi-Fi and consumers can connect to the merchant Wi-Fi, but this is kind of slow and cumbersome and you have to figure things out and fiddle with passwords. These days you can scan QR codes, which is a bit better, but even still. And then there is my preferred solution to this, which is this is one of these things that feels like something that would make an Apple engine UI designer scream because it just feels ugly and it's not sleek. But in my opinion, it's just obviously the correct thing to do. And it doesn't try to be optimal. It tries to be robust and it tries to just provide clear solutions even when things fail. Basically, your wallet as a sender. It should auto-detect if your connection to the internet fails. And if that happens, it should show the signed transaction as a QR code. And then the merchant can just scan the QR code. And on the merchant side, the merchant's app can automatically broadcast the transaction. And the merchant can check the transaction locally. And if the merchant accepts it, then, of course, the merchant would be able to just immediately accept the payment. So if we do this, right, then we don't have to rely on necessarily consumers having great internet. You have a backup option only relying on the merchants having great internet. And if you do this, then merchants are more likely to have reliable internet than consumers are. They are businesses. They are in one place. They have Wi-Fi and all of these things. And this would considerably improve the user experience for people trying to make payments, right? So I would just love to see more wallets just automatically have this as an option. Moving beyond payments, social recovery and multisigs. So I have been a big fan of social recovery for years. I've been a big fan of multisigs for years. Literally, my money is on the line, right? The bulk of my own ETH is in a multisig wallet, and that has most of the keys controlled by other people who are guardians. And I think things like this are a necessary innovation in account security for regular users, right? Regular users are not going to be able to do a good job with 12-word passphrases and not accidentally forgetting them or losing them. Again, I remember when I was still not yet using my multisig, and I created a clever scheme where I basically randomly generated two numbers that added up to my private key and held them in different places, and separately had a backup. And even then, I was almost scared every day that something would happen to one, and then I would have to figure out whether or not the backup works, and maybe the backup would not work either, right? And I personally just feel so much better with a multisig. So I think this stuff is necessary innovation in account security. Go beyond trying to rely on just yourself for regular users. And it needs to be done well, right? So one of the nightmare stories that I had is I remember a few years ago, this was before COVID, I was beta testing a social recovery wallet that was not using the smart contract-based approach. They were using the approach where they basically secret shared your private key and they sent a shard of your private key to your guardians. But the problem is that this required your guardians to install a custom app, and they have a communication channel directly with them, and that communication channel ended up frequently breaking. And then as the guardians just lived their lives, because they used their app for only this one purpose, they would inevitably end up forgetting it when they switched phones, and eventually I ended up losing some of my money, right? So my strong view is that any of these recovery things should not require guardians to have custom infrastructure. They should just be based on guardians' existing ETH addresses. Now, remaining questions. One is, how do we help non-Ethereum users safely be guardians? So what if you want your mom to be a guardian, but she doesn't have an Ethereum account yet? Still an unsolved UX problem. Maybe for that particular case, you want to create an option to piggyback off of something other than an Ethereum account. But then the question is what would it be? And one option might be that if you have 3 non-Ethereum users as guardians, then one of them guards by having a private key stored on iCloud, another one guardians by having their private key stored on Tencent Cloud, and a third on something that's geopolitically independent from both of those. And so that way you get to be both have enough protection against something happening to one individual guardian, but also you're not actually relying on any one specific one of these cloud providers to be safe, right? And you have your company diversification and jurisdictional diversification and all of these things. Privacy, this is a big one. Some of the people that I've talked to, when I suggested to them that they use multisig, they responded with the critique that they did not want guardians to know what assets they have, right? And this is just an important financial privacy thing for them. This can be solved. There are ways to set up a multisig or a social recovery wallet in such a way that the guardians don't actually know what they're guarding. And this can and should be done. There is an easy version where they don't know until they actually have to, recover something. But there is a harder version where they don't know even after that. And then the last thing is just like social norms around authentication, right? Which is, if you ask someone to be your guardian, they need to know that if you ask them to help you send a transaction or recover your key, they should not accept immediately just because you sent them a Telegram message, because, well, if that's the norm, then someone could steal your wallet just by hacking your Telegram, right? So, the education part of this is that they need to remember that they have to ask you something that only you would know, right? Like one simple thing is just like to ask them about a specific detail of the last time that you did something together in person. So social recovery in multisigs. Privacy is another big one. Privacy is still important. Privacy is still a human right, and privacy continues to be a key protection against powerful institutions at their worst. And privacy is something that modern networks technology does not have by default. And so we have to try harder. Now, Amin recently made this tweet and announcing that there's going to be privacy pools v0, the sequel to Trado Cash, which I think is great, right? But at the same time, one of the things that's important to really make sure with privacy is that it's very important to make the privacy actually be private, even in the hands of people who are not perfect and who sometimes screw it up, right? Like, Amin himself, just to give an example, he's also been, very supportive of Iranians, fighting against their authoritarian government, and I think it's a great and honorable cause, and absolutely, stands with all the women who wants to have their life and freedom there, but. At the same time, it's if you think about the intersection of these two things, like. This gets into the point where we're using privacy technology to like do some real serious shit, right? This is not kind of idealistically LARPing privacy. This is like actually using privacy to protect people. And so we don't just need to think about privacy as something that where we just think about it in the abstract and we know we have zero knowledge proofs and all of these things, but really need to think about like really what is the concrete privacy, what is the threat model, are we sure that people are who use cryptocurrency and Zcash and various privacy tools that are important are not actually accidentally going to lose their privacy because they just accidentally do one thing that they shouldn't. And I personally accidentally broke my privacy by fumbling around with Tornado the wrong way about a year and a half ago. So this is an important thing to guard against. Right, it's like easy to accidentally leak data, even if you're using fancy tech. One of my views is that I think more wallets probably need to think about this more explicitly. Like you want better separation of profiles in wallets, probably more defaults toward one wallet per application. One other idea I can talked about recently in my blog is stealth addresses, and stealth addresses is something that like would really need some deep wallet level integration. Wallets should have more direct integration of privacy tools. Another thing is just better defenses against the off-chain side of tracking, and finally, better defenses against Ethereum node providers seeing everything, right? And these are things that I think we can improve on, but these are things that we actually should improve on a lot. So, conclusions again, right? So 2010s were the decade of theory. 2020s are the decade of building out large-scale adoption. And there's important obstacles to this. And fees are a really big one, but user experience is also a really big one. And, it's important to actually keep working on these really specific user experience issues. And to finish off with one sociological note, I think this all shows one of the reasons why it's important for core developers, wallet developers, client developers, application developers to get out more, right? Like, if your city has a place that accepts payment for ETH in person, actually go to it and actually support them. Pay for something with ETH in person. Pay for something with ETH online. Use your ENS name to do stuff. Actually use all of these different applications more once in a while, and this will just, I think, give you this better and much more practical view of what really are the missing pieces that are annoying people. And if you have friends, then try to convince your friends to use Ethereum for online and in-person, payments and other applications, and see what kinds of problems they encounter. Right. So I hope that over the next few years, this is something that we can do more of.
Thank you, Vitalik. We really appreciate you taking the time, my friend.